Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I appreciate the accommodation for the time change and the location change as well. I have a few brief announcements so we can get started. I wanted to know there are many people, reporters, who are on WebEx. You can ask questions after. You need to use the chat function through WebEx. Larry Berman will, the communications director, read that, and I'll do my best to give you an answer at the appropriate time. So thank you all for coming. It's an exciting day here in the House. I first want to recognize my colleagues who have joined me today. Of course, my good friend, the Majority Leader Chris Blazejewski. He has been outstanding partner to me as we begin our journey together in House leadership, and I couldn't ask for anybody better than Chris. With me on Zoom is Deputy Speaker Leman Lima, House Floor Manager Jay Edwards, Deputy Majority Whip Mia Ackerman, who's here to my right, Labor Committee Chairwoman Anastasia Williams, and Representative June Speakman, all who have sponsored bills, and we'll get to those in a minute. I also want to recognize the many housing advocates who've joined us today, as this is a critical, important need for all of Rhode Island. I want to start off by recognizing Paula McFarland from the Pawtucket Housing Authority, Jennifer Hawkins from One Neighborhood Builders, John Marcantonio and Carol O'Donnell from the Rhode Island Builders Association, David Salvatore from the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, Melina Lodge from the Housing Network of Rhode Island, Courtney Nicolato from the United Way of Rhode Island, Karen Santilli from Crossroads, Paul Salerna from West Bay Community Action, and Brenda Clement from the Housing Works of Rhode Island. Thank you all for joining us today. It shouldn't come as a secret to everybody that Rhode Island is in the middle of a housing crisis, and that housing crisis is not new to COVID. Unfortunately, COVID has exacerbated the pressure and exposed a lot of the problems we've had. It was already an issue before. It is a more severe issue now than COVID. Our affordable housing in Rhode Island is not affordable, and it's in very short supply. And a great deal of the housing stock we have is old, it's not always safe, and certainly can't meet the modern needs of today's family. According to Housing Works of Rhode Island, there is no municipality in the state where a household with a median renter income of $34,255 can afford a fair market two-bedroom apartment, and only 3 municipalities where a household with a $50,000 income can. Unfortunately, for many of our fellow Rhode Islanders, they make far less than that, and they face tremendous hurdles in finding anything even remotely close to a livable, sustainable place to stay. If they had a Section 8 voucher, many landlords have refused them because they have a Section 8 voucher. The housing market is so tight, they won't have a problem finding renters. But many renters have little choice but to accept apartments, whether they are clean, safe, and meet their needs. Families are crowding in together, which is not an ideal situation. It's an outright dangerous situation in a pandemic. We are here today because we're all committed to work together to address the critical need of affordable housing. As Speaker, with the backing of my leadership team and the representatives here today, and the representatives in the House, 2 who are in person today, Brandon Potter and Susan Donovan, my 2 good friends, we're going to make housing our #1 priority. We're going to work to improve the development and production of affordable housing in Rhode Island. When I say affordable housing, I mean affordable, moderate, low-income workforce housing. That's a big umbrella of affordable housing. It means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. There's a critical need across the board for housing in Rhode Island. Our state is a beautiful state and a wonderful place to live. We need to do everything it takes to make sure it's affordable for everybody. It's a key component when we're trying to lure companies here who want to have a good workforce. We want to make sure we have housing and we have a good education system. They work hand in glove together. I'm proud to start right now, today, to work on legislation, which I'll get to in a minute, that begins to address these issues. Today is not by any means the end. It's the beginning of a journey where I hope we can all work together to make affordable housing much more prevalent here in Rhode Island and available to everyone who needs it. I want to stop to all Rhode Islanders today and say, please vote for the $65 million. Tomorrow is the bond election on referendum for affordable housing. It's question number 3. I voted for it. I helped pass it in the House, as all my colleagues here today did, and we look forward to that passing tomorrow overwhelmingly. That is the start of something we can all do together. This is a critical investment. Interest rates are at an all-time low. All of these bonds are targeted economic development initiatives that we need to look at as we move forward to help our state. I really want to also thank our congressional delegation, especially Senator Jack Reed. We were able to secure in the last stimulus $200 million in housing rental assistance. That's $200 million to Rhode Island. Rhode Island Housing will be up and running by the end of this month with a user-friendly website to help distribute that $200 million. That $200 million is not just for rental assistance. That $200 million will help people with their mortgage payments, with their tax payments, with their utility payments for water and sewer. And the best part about that $200 million is we have to get it spent and out the door, so to speak, before the end of this year. I know Rhode Island Housing will work together. I want to thank our congressional delegation. I want to thank specifically Senator Reed, who got Rhode Island its small state allocation. It's a significant amount. In the first COVID relief, we only had 15 million. We now have 200 million, and there's a lot less restrictions on what that can be used for. No one's house should be foreclosed on with this assistance. No tenant should be evicted for non-payment of rent. No one should see their property go up for a tax sale or a sewer sale, because we have 200 million in federal funds specifically earmarked for that purpose. I want to thank Senator Reed, and I look forward to working with Rhode Island Housing as we move forward to get that money on the street by the end of this month. Our legislative package that the House is going to highlight today remains a critical element as we move forward. Last week, I introduced legislation to establish a Deputy Secretary of Commerce for housing within the Executive Office of the Governor. The goal is to have a housing champion, a housing czar, if you will, who will oversee all housing initiatives in Rhode Island. They will work with each and every one of the stakeholders in government and in the private sector to develop a housing plan as we move forward. And it's somebody who we can hold accountable, and someone will hold the responsibility for delivering this plan. I do not have a candidate for that. That will be chosen by Governor McKee and his administration, but I am committed to put that forward, and I'm committed to fund that. So as we move forward to a next fiscal year, I look forward to a housing czar to handle this. Massachusetts does it with a great amount of success, and it's about time Rhode Island did it as well. I've also introduced a legislative study commission. Study commission will look at our land use laws, preservation laws, development, production, regulation, zoning, housing, and environmental. It'll be a one-year study commission. We have not looked at our land use laws in Rhode Island for over 30 years, and our time has come now. We have a critical need to address the issues of today and not 30 years ago. We have new information, we have new science, there are environmental concerns, there's certainly housing concerns, and there's zoning concerns. And I'm going to do this collaboratively with the cities and towns. And that's not always an easy thing, because a lot of cities and towns do not fulfill their obligations. So we're going to try to incentivize it for them as we move forward, and we're certainly going to hold them accountable as well. The next bill, which is some bill that's very near and dear to my heart, is on the House calendar for tomorrow. Chairwoman Anastasia Williams has worked for years to try to get this bill passed. I've been a co-sponsor with her. This ends discrimination against low-income families who use vouchers to pay their rental payments monthly. I don't know why this bill hasn't passed in the past, but I'm committed to see it happen tomorrow. I have every confidence the House will overwhelmingly pass this. In the years past, the Senate has passed it. I really want to thank Chairwoman Williams, who continued to fight and did not give up. She knew how important this was to all of Rhode Islanders, but particularly her constituents, and she would not stop. And I'm proud to stand with her today, and I'm proud for what we're going to accomplish tomorrow. And this is it's one of the first major pieces of legislation we're enacting this year, and it's a very worthy cause, and it will have a dramatic impact. 93% of people who have vouchers were denied housing. It's a statistic that's mind-boggling to me. And the only reason, for the most part, that we can gather from our research is because they had a voucher. I'm looking forward to the day that vouchers can be treated as cash and that people will have every opportunity to do that. A 2019 study by South Coast Fair Housing found that although voucher recipients can afford 1/3 of the housing market that's available to them of listed apartments, ultimately 93% are rejected. In Rhode Island, that translates to about 9,300 homes that rely on vouchers. I look forward to tomorrow's vote eagerly. Our next bill is sponsored by Representative June Speakman. It would create a special legislative commission to study Rhode Island low and moderate income housing. It's an act that was passed and worked on by former Representative Shelby Maldonado about 5 years ago. They made numerous recommendations, one which was to continue with the study commission's progress, with their findings, with their advocacy. I look forward for June to pick up that mantle and continue where Shelby left off. I can't think of anybody better than June Speakman to chair that commission. Our next bill was introduced by our House Floor Manager, Jay Edwards. It would extend a tax exemption for real estate that's under construction. This is a current law which is set to expire this year. Jay's legislation would extend it 3 more years. Why this is so important is because many times when we're building homes on spec, as they call it, speculation without a buyer or someone to move into it, builders, developers are afraid to invest in low-income housing because they're going to get taxed on it. And they're going to get taxed during the construction period, they're going to get taxed after it until someone actually uses it. 2 years ago, we changed the law, and we said to the cities and towns, you can only tax the underlying land value. You couldn't tax the new construction until a certificate of occupancy was issued, a CO. The reason for that is the particular property is not putting any burdens on the city and towns. There's no children in the school system. There's no police needed. There's no fire. There's no one living there. So when that CO is issued is when someone's about to move in, and that's when the cities and towns should be able to tax it. I look forward to having that bill extended. Our next bill is brought to us by Deputy Majority Whip Mia Ackerman, and it would require cities and towns to allow tiny homes to be used as accessory buildings and to count them as affordable housing stock. Tiny houses are an exciting new option for some people, and they make home ownership possible for those who may not otherwise be able to afford it. This is a bill that is new, and I congratulate Whip Ackerman for her efforts on this. We look forward to having hearing from all stakeholders about this, but this is being used in other communities and other states, and we look forward to having that option as part of our portfolio here in Rhode Island. And finally, we have legislation introduced by the House Deputy Speaker Charlene Lima from Cranston, and this legislation would change the quorum requirements for planning boards and zoning boards. And this would establish that a quorum would be the majority of those present. Why that is so critically important is many times, and I know you're going to hear from some of the advocates, a lot of developers, particularly for housing, get prepared, show up at a hearing, and for one reason or another, or due to a conflict or a snowstorm or an event, prior to Zoom, meetings would be canceled for lack of quorum, and they'd be continued. Many of these hearings only meet once a month. It becomes a 30 to 60-day delay. You have posting requirements, you have advertising requirements, and many of those expenses must be borne by the developer or the applicant, and those expenses ultimately filter down into the cost of a home. I also know that the State Housing Appeals Board, SHAB, has inquired to be part of Deputy Speaker Lima's bill. So I look forward to working with SHAB and Deputy Speaker Lima to complete this legislation. This was introduced last year, and due to COVID, it didn't go anywhere. I know Charlene will continue to work hard and make this bill become a reality. These bills and the housing bond, I sincerely hope will be approved tomorrow, will begin a significant path toward home ownership for many of our Rhode Islanders. There is much work ahead. Leader Blazejewski and myself, putting committees together, we wanted to emphasize the importance of housing. We changed the name and the focus of the housing municipal committee, which should be municipal government, to housing and municipal government, because we want that to be highlighted as we move forward in this. I'm committed to work with anybody and everybody, from our federal delegation to our state delegation, to my colleagues in the House, to my partners in the Senate, to local cities and towns, to anybody who has an interest in housing. The place is here. We want to hear your ideas. We want to work collaboratively with you. We want to identify what the solutions are, and we want to implement them. Thank you all for coming today. I look forward to working with you as we move forward. I know there's some advocates who want to say some stuff. I will then open it up for questions from the press, and my colleagues will also take any questions if there are any from the press. So I will start off in the same order that I read everybody, if they want to speak. If you don't want to, you certainly don't have to. I'll start with Paula McFarland from the Pawtucket Housing Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to say, I personally want to thank you for not only putting to the floor SOI, source of income, but also for this whole legislative package that you have promoted today. The process and renewal of rebuilding Rhode Island seems so great right now. The affordable housing creates a pathway to economic recovery for all families of Rhode Island. Mr. Speaker, your vision for Rhode Island, along with your colleagues, gives us much hope today. And hope is our motto here in Rhode Island, that all families will live in communities of choice. Thank you on behalf of all the PHAs in Rhode Island. We look forward to hearings in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jennifer Hawkins from One Neighborhood Builders, if she wants to.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Speaker, for inviting me to participate. I'm just really thrilled to lend my support for this slate of legislation by coming out strong on these affordable housing bills. You and your leadership team have signaled that bold investments in Rhode Island are what's needed to build back better. I was really proud to provide some verbal testimony at Representative Williams' hearing a couple weeks ago, and it will be a huge celebration to have the anti-discrimination legislation enacted. Thanks for the foresight to pull together the Housing Commission, and I stand ready to help you move that forward. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. And then my friends from the Rhode Island Builders, John Marcantonio and Carol O'Donnell.
Ladies first.
Carol O'Donnell. Well, thank you, Speaker. I'm looking forward to contributing to solving the problems facing home ownership in Rhode Island. We want our families to be able to afford to stay and work in Rhode Island, and I appreciate you including us in this, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
Mr. Speaker, I'll just reinforce what you said earlier. This is it's not an easy issue to tackle. So a lot of us understand the difficulties and challenges here. You have to deal with the municipalities, the environment, it's balanced with housing demand. But your action now is so well timed. Having a housing policy is how we're going to keep and attract our businesses. It's how the state's going to get back to growth. So again, this well thought out policy, well timed. We're here to help, and we thank you for bringing everyone together to move this issue forward, because that's a big accomplishment in itself.
Thank you, John. David Salvatore from Rhode Island Realtors Association.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. I'm happy to join my colleagues in the housing advocacy world. Now, on behalf of the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, I want to thank you, Speaker, for inviting and including our association to be part of your housing vision. You know, Rhode Island, and you've heard it before, and I'll say it again, we need a proactive and coordinated strategy that addresses our housing shortage. We've always believed and stressed that the foundation of our economy is housing. And we've also realized throughout the decades that the fastest and most effective way to close the wealth gap in Rhode Island and across our country is through home ownership. But that starts with safe and sustainable housing. And, you know, again, we're really excited to be one of your housing partners and applaud you for making housing our collective priority as our state battles out of the pandemic. So we look forward to working with you and our continued partnership, you know, and working with all of the members of the House to provide for what is necessary during these very challenging times, and that's more housing opportunities to Rhode Islanders. So keep up the good work. We're looking forward to standing shoulder to shoulder with you throughout this process.
Thank you, David. Melina Lodge from Housing Network of Rhode Island.
Hi, we're really appreciative of your efforts to elevate housing as a top priority item this session, and we're really looking forward to working with your office to make sure that we have another guest here apparently, that low-income Rhode Islanders are being served not just through home ownership, but through quality, affordable housing rental stock that allows them to succeed in their own lives and hopefully move up the path to home ownership. So we're really looking forward to working with you this session and being useful in any way to offer feedback on bills that get proposed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melina. Thank you, our assistant, too.
Yes, for sure.
Courtney Nicolato from United Way of Rhode Island.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so very much for your vision and direction as it relates to the importance of safe and affordable housing for all Rhode Islanders. You know, in my opinion, housing is a fundamental right for all humans. And unfortunately, that's not reality today. We have 98,000 Rhode Islanders who called 211 just last year because they were either in crisis or on the verge of crisis. We know we have to do better. We know that there are systemic barriers to success. We also know that this requires an immense amount of additional investment in our state. So thank you for taking this and running with it. Thank you to our unwavering dedication of Rep. Williams and so many representatives in the House who know that in order for us to succeed in our state, that means we have to ensure that everyone has a safe and affordable place to live. So thank you. We're excited and stand with you in the work to make all of these bills a reality.
Thank you so much. Karen Santilli from Crossroads.
Thank you, Speaker. I appreciate being invited to hear these great programs and bills that you're supporting. It makes our job so much easier when we're starting from this place rather than trying to have to convince you that housing is important. Housing is healthcare. Housing is a right, as others have mentioned. So, you know, we at Crossroads, we're not only providing services to people experiencing homelessness, but we're also a housing developer and developing housing for people that are often forgotten about in this conversation. And they're the extremely poor, extremely low-income individuals. So all of these bills will allow us to make significant progress in getting not only people off the streets and into apartments because they're not being discriminated against because we're helping them pay their rent with rental assistance, as well as creating more permanent supportive housing for the most vulnerable in our system. So thank you for your leadership on these issues, and we look forward to continue working with you.
Thank you so much, Karen. Paul Solera from West Bay Community Action.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to all your colleagues. Oh, there I am. There's a little, my Wi-Fi is a little messed up. I want to say thank you so much on behalf of myself and the 6 other community action agencies and the more than 200,000 Rhode Islanders we serve. These housing initiatives will really, truly help our clients and all those Rhode Islanders that are in housing need. one of the largest things that is requested of us on a daily basis is housing assistance. And it's great to see that the state of Rhode Island is putting it to the forefront. So thank you. We're here with you. We're here to stand beside you, and best of luck.
Thank you so much, Paul. And last but certainly not least, Brenda Clement from Housing Works, Rhode Island.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I just want to echo all of the comments of my colleagues that we're so grateful for your leadership on this critical issue, and look forward to working with many of your colleagues who have been helping and assisting us with these bills for a long time. As you pointed out, you know, it's evident during this global pandemic that home is the foundation for our health, our economic, and our community well-being. It's impossible to shelter in place when you have no home, or practice social distancing when you live in overcrowded or unsafe housing, or participate in remote learning when your family is at risk of eviction or foreclosure of your home. And so now is the time, as you said, to demonstrate that Rhode Island can and should be a place where all residents are able to live in safe and healthy and affordable homes and thriving communities. And we look forward to working with you and all of your colleagues in government to make that a reality. Thank you again.
Thank you, Brenda. Just a little announcement before we open it up to questions from the press. Representative Nathan Beer was here earlier, and also Chairman Casey were here as well. I want to recognize them. And I defer to the press, and we'll start with, I guess, Patrick Anderson. We'll do it alphabetically, since it begins with an A. Patrick, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them, and then we'll go from there. You can ask Patrick, you don't have to type if you want to, and then I can go to Eli after Patrick. Or you can type, whatever you want. And I'll be happy if there's no questions.
He's trying to talk.
Patrick, we'll come back to you. We'll go to Eli Sherman. Eli, do you have any questions?
Yeah, hey, Speaker, thanks for having us. I just am wondering real quick, one thing that I often hear from housing advocates is that there's a general need for more dedicated streams of funding to go towards affordable housing. I'm wondering if there's anything in this legislative package that addresses that, or if you have any plans in the upcoming budget to do something beyond the bonding that obviously is going to go towards affordable housing.
Very good question. So, yes, first of all, the question number 3, the $65 million will go a long way. That's the first start of it. The only legislative, I should say, the only fiscal impact of the legislation before you today is the commitment by the House to fund the housing czar. As I said earlier, that would be Governor McKee's selection of who he ultimately picks through the Commerce Department. We're committed to do that. And beyond that, we'll have to wait and see what kind of numbers we get out of Washington. But I want to take the opportunity, let's not forget that $200 million that Jack Reed and our congressional delegation has secured for Rhode Island. My understanding, there may even be some more if this next package passes. And that housing assistance is not just rental assistance, and that benefits the landlords, the mortgage companies that are holding the banks, people who, tenants credit, because if you put a moratorium on, the amount due doesn't go away, it's just delayed. With rental assistance, these bills get paid. People keep a good credit rating. People are able to stay in the house, get their feet on the ground. So I'm looking forward to Rhode Island Housing coming forward with a user-friendly website and the ability for us to get this money out on the street as quickly as possible. That will go a long way. I know it's a one-time fix, a short-term fix, but it's $200 million today that we didn't have yesterday. So I'm willing to take it, coupled with the housing bond that passes. That's $250 million. That's a good way to start, in my opinion.
Great, just a quick follow-up. So just nothing right now in terms of looking in the Lieutenant Governor's proposed budget coming up for new revenue streams or dedicated spending towards the development of affordable housing that doesn't currently exist.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's correct. I haven't seen the Lieutenant Governor's budget. I know he's working eagerly on it. I look forward to that opportunity. And we have several representatives here who also have a bunch of housing initiatives. I know Chairwoman Diaz has one. I know I've been talking with Representative Giraldo, who's here as well, Josh Giraldo from Central Falls. So we're only highlighting 7 today, but there are a lot of other representatives, a lot of other bills. We look forward to hearing from everybody on this issue, as well as people from the private sector. And as I said earlier, I'm willing to partner and work with anybody, from the governor to the Senate, to housing advocates, to cities and towns. If you're
Thank
all
you,
set.
Speaker. I have more, but Patrick could go ahead.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. Sorry, on Rep. Ackerman's bill, the tiny house bill, it looks from reading that like there aren't any restrictions on renting the tiny houses, and that it essentially legalizes ADUs across the state. If that is the case, is this bill essentially doing away with single-family zoning as we've always known it in Rhode Island?
No, not at all, because you can only have an accessory use in a single-family home that's permitted. So some single-family homes and some certain communities don't allow accessory uses, and also because of the physical constraints of the land, you may have a single-family home on a 7,000 square foot lot that may not be able to support a tiny house. So Representative Ackerman's here, and if she has any questions, she could answer them. But the reality is, we're going to work with the cities and towns. We're going to welcome, as we go through the hearing and the committee process, for their input, and there'll be many opportunities for us to fine-tune or amend this legislation as we move forward through the process. But this is an important issue, and we're eager to hear from the League of Cities and Towns, as well as the housing advocates and anyone else about any issue, for that matter.
And I have one more question, and I don't know if Eli, while I was gone, got to this, but do you support the conveyance fee that the governor proposed last year to support affordable housing? And then I believe there's a proposal and legislation in the Senate to do that this year.
So we're looking at that. We haven't had a hearing on that particular issue, so I look forward to hearing on that and see where it goes. It's all about, when we're talking about raising a tax or spending money or cutting something, it's all about revenue. And until we actually know what we're getting from the federal government, until we know what our internal House fiscal staff and the Revenue Conference tells us in May, it's very hard to predict the outcome of any revenue, whether we're raising it or we're cutting social services. So it's a possibility, Patrick. I'm open to the idea, but is there another way to fund it? Is there a better way to fund it? I'm all ears, and that's why we have committee process. That's why we go through, the whole committee input from the public. I mean, where do the realtors stand on that issue? Is there a better way to collect that money? Is there another way to look at it, how we can raise enough funds to create a dedicated revenue stream? So it is a possibility.
Thank you.
Eli, do you want to go back to you?
Sure. I also had a question on the tiny homes. I'm just wondering, because cities and towns are supposed to be developing a certain amount of affordable housing as a portion of their overall housing stock, I wonder if this will incentivize people to develop more tiny homes or ancillary units in lieu of actual developments of affordable housing. And has that concern come up, and do you see that happening?
That's certainly is a goal. I mean, some people prefer to live in a smaller home. It's a smaller footprint for the environment. Some people want to live in a smaller home because they're connected, either family or friends, with the people who live in the substantial home. These are accessory homes. So there's a lot that goes into it. Yes, the idea is that we can build more tiny houses to create more affordable housing stock. That's the goal. You are correct. That's what we'd like to get to. But we need to do that within the confines of the municipality, the zoning, and the constraints. A lot of real estate, this is what some people fail to understand, a lot of real estate is only developable for one home, because you might have a septic system, you might have a well, and each of those particular necessities for a house also have their own buffer systems. And like a septic system, you can't have a well within so many feet and vice versa. So physically, you may have a small lot. Not every lot has sewers and water. And not every lot has utilities. And even the lots that are able to sustain the septic system, sometimes depending on the size of the septic system, may not be able to support a second system on their property. So there's all kinds of requirements that go along with that, and those all have to be worked out. But the goal here is to create more affordable housing stock. About 2 or 3 years ago in the General Assembly, we allowed developers, when they're building new construction, to be able to build little in-law apartments inside their house without the necessity of going through zoning. I know a particular development, I wasn't personally involved with it. It was a gentleman by the name of Hugh Fisher who built in Warwick. Unfortunately, Mr. Fisher just passed away, but he saw the forefront, he saw the future. And he built homes with these little in-law apartments so people wouldn't have to go to assisted livings or nursing home. They had a place for their mother-in-law, their father-in-law, their mother and father to stay with them. We're looking at creative ways, we're looking at how other states are doing it. That's the whole purpose of a housing czar, so we can look at what's working around the country, and we can try to emulate it here in Rhode Island.
Thank you, Speaker.
Channel 6, I've been told. Do you have any questions, Channel 6? No, that's okay. If that is all you gentlemen have, I'm willing to conclude and say thank you for everybody. We have House hearings that are starting shortly, and I'm taking up valuable IT time and TV time for those House hearings. I want to say thank you to my colleagues who joined me today, to certainly the housing advocates who we highlighted today, but who have been on the forefront, working day in and day out for years. This isn't a Johnny-come-lately. Some of these people I've known for a long, long time, as far as an advocate, who continue to fight for that. And thank you for covering this, and we look forward, as we move forward to the legislative session, to make housing a #1 priority for the House. Thank you.